Thanks, Matthew. Welcome, everybody, to Master Naturalists Present Who's Got That? Today's presenter is Gwen Isham. Gwen is a Texas native growing up in Duncanville with 10 Mile Creek in her backyard. Some might find her along the Trinity River bottoms searching for evidence of wildlife and trying to identify mushrooms and lichens. So Gwen is currently pursuing her master's from Texas A&M University Commerce in wildlife conservation. Since 2012, she has worked as an outdoor educator for many local natural resource organizations and is currently an educator for Texas Wildlife Association. Gwen is an ambitious gardener, animal rescuer, hiker, backpacker, kayaker, composter, and fellow master naturalist. Welcome, Gwen.
Awesome, thank you. All right, everybody. So just a disclaimer, we're about to look at a lot of pictures of scat. I'm sure you understand that, but just want to remind you, that's what a lot of these pictures are. I've taken them myself right here in the DFW region. So you can just tell I'm a nature nerd and I have plenty to talk about on this topic, but scat, in my opinion, it at least tells you that there are animals present in that habitat. So even if you're not seeing another animal for years, but you're constantly seeing scat, you know they're eating, they're surviving. So it's still proper evidence that they're here. And so you can make conservation steps once you understand who's living in that area. All right, so let me move forward in my PowerPoint. So we have here in DFW, there are millions of people just, living in this space. We have a map to the left, you just picture downtown, but we do have unique habitat in that there is still lots of creeks, the Trinity River, the lakes linked up to them. And so we do have a huge corridor for wildlife to move back and forth among these little matrices of habitats. And even some people have those wildscape yards. And even in the bigger cities, this little video I have here is Central Park in New York City. This is 2014, and they set up cameras and they had, packs of coyotes living in the woods at Central Park. So even here in Dallas, you're going to see a variety of species, big and small, passing by, just because we have this huge water corridor, this, matrix of habitat for them to get through. So when you do go out into the woods, though, if y'all do want to start examining who's living there, you want to observe what is unique about that habitat. Ecosystems and habitat, we learn about those in science class and we talk about them, but the size and shape, is not exactly defined. You can have a habitat or ecosystem underneath a log, or you can have huge acreage of space dedicated to that habitat. And so there's going to be differences. So just be conscious of, the temperature at that time of day when you're out there, because that's going to change how tracks or scat even look. The terrain of the topography, like how are the animals using that terrain also? Where's the water sources? Everyone's got to drink water every day. So finding those, you're definitely going to find signs. The weather, has it rained? Has it been hot? That'll change the shape and color of what you're finding. And then public access, do people walk their dogs there? Because those dogs go outside too. Is there a neighborhood nearby that, the animals could be frequently coming back and forth to? Is there, road access, the trash man, things like that. You have to be conscious of it because, you might see tons of scat around, but it could just be everybody's golden retriever and cute little terrier. And, think about when the humans are out there, are they leaving food, trash? Are they hikers? Are they bikers? There's going to be just tiny little differences to what animals you then might see because of that human traffic. And then just know who are the native species there. Who do you expect to find? Who do you not expect to find? And when you do see scat, though, look around that area and consider what resources are around and the pressures to obtain them. And I say that because when you go to the restroom, human or animal, that's an intimate time, right? You are vulnerable to whatever's out there. And so the fact that they feel safe and confident enough to do this behavior, you know, you got to take in why. Like, what is it about this one spot? So this image is deer. So we have tons of deer droppings and deer footprints, and they're a communal, you know, animal. And so they're in a pack. So they're going to feel much more confident going one at a time, or, you know, amongst themselves. So you're going to find these bigger packs than if you have an animal that travels by themselves. And so scat, so here, if y'all want to type in chat, you know, any other version of the word scat you've ever heard of, or what you would call it when you're out there in the woods, it's always fun to see all these fun words we have come up with. But I got on my list dung, spore. Some of these can be specific to a specific animal. Stool, crap, dump, load, turd, excrement, fecal pellets, fumants like spraint. Spraint is only for the weasels. So otters, mink, they spraint. Guano is kind of for birds in general, but bats are also guano. It's kind of the whitish, it's the amount, I won't go into the chemistry of it, but the look of guano is very specific. Frass is for insects. Castings are for worms, things like that, and even coprolites. Coprolites are fossilized scat from an ancient animal, a dinosaur, you know, something that lived thousands of years ago. You know, you can find those in rock form. Middens, and then latrines, and we'll go over what a latrine is in a second. But what is the scat actually telling us? Okay, you know, what is it communicating about what's going on in the habitat? So it's going to tell you who's present, okay, once you have identified who it belongs to, and their current diet. So just like us, this is what they've been eating within the last few days, week tops. You know, they have a regular cycle, just like humans should. I know everyone here might have a different schedule, but it is what you just ate. So we're knowing what in that habitat are they able to get resources from. So I'm paying attention to the actual bits and pieces inside that scat. And then the population dynamics, is it one individual? Is it 7? Is it, you know, can you tell sizes? Sometimes you can't tell if it's a parent and an infant, you know. And then once you get a bigger picture of that place, you're going to understand what predator-prey relationships are, you know, happening currently in that season or in that whole year if it's somewhere you frequent often. And so just by looking at scat, you're getting all this information. And if, you know, you want to further verify that, you can definitely set up cameras. You can start doing population measurements, but just checking out scat, any person can figure out who is in that habitat over a period of time. So a latrine, y'all, this is kind of funny. So this pile is disgusting on this big old log. You know, you can see there's probably like 20 individual clumps. So a latrine is a communal defecation station where animals that live in groups will go to the restroom together. This could be just for safety. This can be marking territory. But these individuals, most common are going to be our raccoons. A lot of people who get damage to their property, and sometimes it's because of latrines. It's from, you know, raccoons finding the top of your garage or a hole in your shed, or the squirrels, or, you know, tree rats. They will all go together. And some of them are very specific to when they go and where they go, and it's going to be a routine. And us humans, we kind of know that life. We are a part of this group of animals that like going set on that schedule. So same time of day, same place where we feel safest. Most of the time it's at home for us humans. But for animals, they are not going to go poop where they eat or where they sleep. So they're going to be traveling away from home to get this done. So this is seen in raccoons, elephants, horses, antelope, deer, rabbits, skinks, rodents, and humans. So here in Texas, you're not going to see the antelopes or the elephants, well, right here in DFW. So, but everybody else, you could definitely find some little piles around your home or community and, learn about all these species. And even us in public, we have public restrooms. That's a latrine. It's the same difference. And then here's an ancient latrine. So this is in Argentina. I'm just a little bit of a nerd about it. But there are dinosaurs that they were able to identify because they had these huge latrines, so huge herds living together. And so they did this for one, it avoids parasites where you're sleeping and eating. It also warns predators that, hey, like there's a lot of us here. We're not scared of you. We can defend ourselves. We have more of us than of you. And when dinosaurs actually cracked these open, they're going to find what the diet was, what plants, what funguses, if they were a meat eater, things like that. It's still, in rock form. So that's a whole different type of science that what I can identify, but there are some dedicated people willing to study this. So it's just cool how far back we can learn about animals just by studying their scat. Even in America, we've done this to track, human populations, globally migrating. Let's see, in the United States, I think the most famous one in the United States is that the Lewis and Clark expedition. They found a campsite in Montana just based off the latrine of everyone on that group. It was like 40, 50 people. But they were taking certain types of diets and certain types of medicine that were around at that time for, say, like constipation and things on the road. And so by looking up piles, they could identify that, yeah, this was the Lewis and Clark expedition. So it's really weird, but that's science. All right, but when you are starting to identify the species, what you're gonna check out for, so there's multiple steps. So you wanna look at size and shape. And this is going to sound gross, y'all, but the size and shape has to be relative to that animal's ability to push it out of his body. So the circumference of that hole is limited across species, okay? So if you find something 3 inches across, it's not a squirrel. You can already just take that one out. So you do have to be a little conscious of this measurement. In the livestock industry, they actually do pay attention to this measurement. I'm not saying you need to know the difference between a raccoon circumference and a coyote by any means, but you can guesstimate when you see some kind of log, just how big that is. To me, in my head, I do it by the coins, so penny, nickel, quarter. And then you can make a better educated guess on the size of your individual. You're going to look at the insides. What are the contents of that diet? Where did they leave it? If it's open space, buried bottom of a tree, that'll be more determined on how comfortable that animal is in nature. And then what's called their vigilance. So vigilance is the act of looking out for danger. And when, if you have a pet dog, and you're out walking with them, when they relieve themselves, they're going to look back at you because they trust you. You're going to protect him in that very vulnerable moment. So that's his vigilance. He's depending on you to kind of help him out. But when you're in the wild and you're a wild animal, if you're not in a pack, you can kind of make some guesses on how vigilant that animal was while he was relieving himself. And we'll talk about that weirdness. All right, so use a unit of measurement that's kind of consistent. So I have a pen that's also a ruler that has, been very handy. So when you don't have to put your hand down near it. And then if I don't have that, I just use my shoe. And I know that like how many inches my shoe is across. It's like 3 inches. But if you're trying to share your image to somebody else to ask for an ID or ask for an opinion, use a common unit of measurement that they can recognize. If I send the picture with my shoe, the person's like, I don't know, are you a size 8 or a size 11 or a kid's 5, with the ruler, that's universal. So they can be able to identify just kind of that species a little bit better. Some people use their hands too, and that's great. But, I don't want you to trip and fall. I don't want you to like accidentally skim and pick up a chunk of that as you're picking yourself back up. So I don't recommend using your hand, but you always can. And then you're going to check the contents. So you don't have to break it open, but if you really wanted to, you could get a stick and you can break open the logs and try to identify if it's plant matter, animal matter, shells, bones, seeds, things like that. So here we're going to talk about this pile later on, but I just want y'all to kind of look at it. Just be a little conscious that this is different. This is not a typical pile that you find out in nature. It's got this black ring around it. It has one type of seed. And then there's a mixture of hair and some black goo. Okay, so what they ate was not fun. If this went through your body, you're not going to enjoy that digestion. But we'll talk about it as we keep going. Well, I'll show you this picture again. All right, so looking at the parts of that scat. So you're kind of just first trying to tell, is it a pure plant-based diet or a pure animal-based diet? Once you're talking about omnivores, that can be a little confusing. And so there's other tips you're going to look at after that. So for animal-based, there's two kind of main points for that. So meat and organs as their food intake, you know, it's going to be more tubular, less twisted and smooth, kind of blunt, tapered ends. Kind of like that perfect poop emoji, basically. If it is hair and bone that didn't get digested, like the animal consumed majority of that animal's body, the hair and bone didn't get digested, and so it's going to be drier when it comes out. It's going to be twisted and tapered as it went through the large and small intestine in that mammal. So you'll notice these tiny differences. And then when it's a plant-based diet, you know that there's a lot more fiber in it. So it's going to have a pellet form. It could be very loose and crumbly. And most of them have blunt ends because, you know, think about when that animal is actually dropping that, it's going to hit the ground. So there could be an impact. Some of these animals are really tall. Some of them are very short. So being conscious of that. And so I kind of put some animals at the bottom of this slide, going from plant-based on the right all the way to our meat eaters on the left. Then you get your omnivores in the middle. Just so y'all know, squirrels are omnivores. They eat insects, they eat snakes. Nuts are definitely a great protein and meal for them, but you know, there are plenty of evidence. I have pictures of them eating reptiles and invertebrates. So they're an omnivore, but a lot of people, they see those big two front teeth and they just get classified as a herbivore, but you know, everyone's got to eat something. So it's kind of cool to know these little differences. All right, so then checking the placement, where was that scat? You know, how confident did that animal feel when they, you know, did their business? So open space is very confident. Buried means they're trying to hide their scent. You know, they don't want it to be obvious where they just went. Bottom of a tree, you know, definitely look straight up then. You're going to find, like here in Texas, it's probably only owls leaving pellets, which are vomited, not, you know, excremented. So those will be at the bottom of a tree. But if you're in other habitats, say like you're in a jungle, Costa Rica, and sloths and things like that, they come down to the bottom of the tree and then climb back up. So it's a good way to know the difference in your mammals and their behaviors. If you were, you know, sloth hunting or orangutan hunting or something, not hunting, but observing. All right. Also with that placement though, you know, you're going to see how confident they were when they were, you know, really vulnerable. So this poor little guy, he was standing here in this dry, hot summer day for a while. And it's sad to say, but we can all relate to this guy, but it looked like he kind of, I'm going to draw on it with orange. He had like a plug kind of stopping him up before he could get the rest of it out. So humans, we've been there. We feel for this dude, okay? But he was willing to risk being in the heat, being in this dried, arid area where there used to be water, obviously, but during summertime there wasn't. And like looking at his scat, I don't know if y'all can tell what it's made out of. It's a lot of grasshopper. It's a lot of dried seeds like honey locust, mesquite seeds, things like that. So he was desperate. He was eating whatever he can, but then he did get a little bit of tissue. That like reddish brown tint shows he got something that had moisture in it he was able to consume. But But this poor guy, he struggled this day. When I found this picture, I was laughing at him because I understood. And here's his track. So we kind of got this round shape here, and then that, 2 toes. That is a piggy, a big fat piggy. So this is a hog traveling a creek bed. But then we're measuring his vigilance. Okay, so he was willing to risk his safety. He was a big boy. He's probably a male all by himself, so he's pretty confident already being by himself. But he walked along this creek bed until he found some water, and then had a good little mud wallow, and did his business on dry land. So this is what I'm talking about. You know, how careful were they? Because they took the way, you know, the time to go away from where they sleep, from where they feel safe, to, you know, release their bowels, to go get more resources. And so you have to take in all these behaviors as a part of it. You know, he's not going to poo where he eats, but he will poo where he bathes. And, you know, so do us humans. So we are very similar. But when you are looking at vigilance for that animal, you know, kind of examine the surroundings while dropping. You know, were they behind a bush? Were they trying to hide themselves? Were they perfectly out in the open? You know, our dogs kind of do the same thing. Were they aware of any predator presence while vulnerable? Like, where would that coyote have gone after him? You know, it's just kind of funny to think about this moment in his life. He has to do this. He has to, you know, process his digestion, but he wants to stay safe at the same time. And, you know, this spent a lot of time. I bet he was sitting there for a minute trying to get that plug out, you know, so the time spent doing their business is a part of this vigilance. Oh, here's another pile from that guy. So kind of zoomed in, you can kind of see the seeds and the grasshopper legs. So this is a typical summer diet for omnivores in Texas when they're just like really desperate for some food. It's, you know, 105 degrees outside, but mesquite seeds, honey locust seeds are going to give them a little bit of moisture, a little bit of protein. Grasshoppers for sure give them some protein. And, you know, you can easily catch 100, even as humans walking in the summer, you're going to see grasshoppers everywhere. But so knowing the difference throughout the seasons of what you might find in these animals is really important. What they're eating on a hot summer day is very different from, say, early spring, you know, after flooding in the winter, things like that. And this little clip is just to reinforce that vigilance. So this squirrel had lowered his vigilance. Someone had a feeder and a camera, and the squirrel's like, sure, I'm going to eat. All these magpie birds are going to eat. And then you get this red-tailed hawk that noticed that this, man, might not be a red tail actually. Notice that this squirrel is not paying attention to his surroundings. He's not looking out for predators. Sadly, the hawk actually misses him, so he does get another chance to redeem his life. So he's not relieving himself, but he's taking in a resource. So I just wanted y'all to help understand that vigilance term and what it meant for these animals. And you know, if you lower your vigilance, you can get eaten really quickly. You're just enjoying a meal, getting fat, not really caring about anything and happy. And then this hawk comes out of nowhere. But luckily he made it. He got to live another day and learn a lesson. All right, so when you are out in the woods, there's a lot of different resources you can use. And I'll show some books that I own at the end. Some resources, but this is a bandana or just a piece of paper you can get off the internet, but it's sold as a bandana at a lot of nature stores online. A really common online shop, y'all, is Acorn Naturalists. And so they have a lot of good outdoor gear. I think it's like $7 for this bandana. So you could carry it around your neck or in your pocket, wet it, you know, to help you. But then when you find scat, you can easily look at this. And this is for all of North America, the most common scats you will find. And here in Texas, you can kind of, well, especially in the city, you know, half of these you can just forget about. So first you want to look at deer versus the rabbits and hares. And deer are going to have one little end that has like a blunt point, and that's where the pellet had to fall that, what, 3 feet to the ground. So it's just that impact, which makes that flat end. Rabbits and hares are, only like 6 inches tall. And so when their droppings hit the ground, they're not going to have that blunt end. So that's what you're trying to pay attention to, these tiny little details to tell the difference when you have a habitat with all the species living in them. If the deer was sitting down when he went to the restroom, you have no luck. But you know that a herbivore definitely left that little pile. All right, then looking at raccoons, opossums, and armadillos can be even harder. Raccoons, to me, basically looks like human, but a little bit smaller based off circumference, so a small human. And if you have children, you know what that looks like. Opossums are very similar, but opossum scat always has a bit, in my opinion, of aquatic vegetation in them. They are swimmers, they're hungry. And so when I find opossum, that's what I can kind of use. There's a picture in here. Crayfish, raccoons will actually go after crayfish too. So it's kind of hard to tell the difference truly, except looking at size and shape. And then armadillos are basically insectivores. So they're going to have way more insects than, say, meat and berries in their diet. They will have those things, but the insects are number one, and they're going to have a good variety of that. Opossums do too. So, it's kind of hard. You got to really study the resources and the material to identify the difference and where are they actually going. These aren't latrine animals. They're going to go somewhere hidden. So to actually find, I've never found armadillo scat, to be honest. I don't know where they go. But I've seen raccoon and opossum plenty. Skunks, kind of the same way, smaller, but a little bit more fragmented in how it looks, kind of like a cat at home, your house cats, but have a little more, they are omnivores. They're going to have some plant material in them. Really rare to find scat from a skunk. You'd have to have tracks next to it to really be able to confirm that's what you're looking at. And then coyote, fox, and bobcat. So coyote is the one you're going to see the most often. It could be a dog, a domestic dog, or it could truly be a coyote. But you're going to have that kind of twisted ends where the dried hair is, but they are omnivores. So there's going to be probably some grass in there, but you're going to see that dark tissue also from the organs and meat. Foxes are very much the same, but a fox actually uses his scat to claim his territory. So foxes will usually relieve themselves right outside their den hole. So you can kind of tell the difference between an armadillo hole and a fox hole based off little piles of scat around the rim, because armadillos aren't going to do that. And then bobcats do not eat plants. They are true carnivores. So you will just find hair and bones in that scat. Sometimes for a coyote pack, though, that could be what their diet is for a full week after a good hunt and kill. And so sometimes I honestly can't tell. I'll see multiple piles. So I'll be like, okay, this was a pack, but was it a bobcat teaching its youngins what to eat, or was it coyotes? So we can't always guarantee that these animals aren't on a stricter diet or only eating something. So they're educated guesses. Beavers are actually quite fun to find. They usually go to the restroom in the water, so it's very rare, but it literally just looks like a pile of sawdust because they're chewing tree bark, the softwood and the heartwood and whatever, doesn't get digested goes through their body. They do not eat meat, so you're not going to find that in their scat at all. All right, so looking at this guy, this is right here in Dallas. The Trinity River Skyline Trail is actually where I hike the most because I live right next to it. My dogs like to explore it. And I love to find the wildlife down there. So we got this long dried piece. We got a lot of hair in it. It's kind of hard to identify who they actually ate, whether this was a rabbit, somebody's house cat, it's not always obvious, but this is a coyote. Just based off the size and circumference, I should have put a ruler on this, but this was a good 6 or 7 inches of pile. So this is a good, happy coyote. He got a good meal that week, and this is him. He ate everything else, and this is what his body did not digest. This is also a coyote, y'all. So if y'all haven't been to the John Bucker Sands Wetland Center, that is one of my favorite places to go for scat, just because it's a very unique nature center and it is a wetland. So there is food there year round for the wildlife. There's also a pair of nesting bald eagles. That's always good to catch up with them from a distance. But the coyotes are our top carnivore now or our top predator, I should say, now in Texas. We've sadly kind of eliminated much of the mountain lions and almost all of the bears. Bears are endangered. Mountain lions get shot on sight, sadly. There's no protection for them. So the coyotes are doing all the work and they still get hunted. It's not their fault. Anyway, when they're in the wetlands, though, you're going to see more diversity of what they can eat because they are dogs. They like to swim. They can hunt in the water. So they might be birds. It might be crawdads. You know, if they can. It's really rare they actually get a full-grown turtle, but baby turtles definitely during that part of summer. But also you're starting to see there's some mud in their scat. So what they were eating was living in the water. They're not cleaning up their food. So along the boardwalk at John Bucker Sands, you're going to find these piles. And I could just imagine, you know, this little coyote family just living it up because it is a beautiful nature center. I'm so sorry, I looked at y'all's comments. So yes, this recording will be available if teachers want to use it. And also I am an educator for DFW. I do programs for schools. So if y'all ever want to contact me, I'll leave my email at the end. Y'all can certainly reach out to me for virtual and in-person programming. All right. So here is a good pile of wetness. So this is at Louisville's Nature Center, Lisdola, which is for their independent school district. But here we have that really wet poo. So we have a lot of mixture in here. There's some black beetle bodies, there's some seeds, there's some aquatic vegetation. It's kind of in this weird clump. It's not actually segmented, so it's not dry. There is little bits of fur in here, but I don't think it's fur from him eating it. I think it's fur from them just licking their body. But this animal has the most diverse diet of any other animal in America, especially. So, you know, they'll eat amphibians, mammals, insects, grasses, worms, reptiles, birds, you know, they'll go after carrion, the trash at your home. So this belongs to our happy little opossums. They eat everything. They're very well adapted to our neighborhoods and our cities because of that. And we leave plenty of food out, but also our yards have insects and lizards, you know, baby birds that fall from their nests. You know, this opossum is out there at night feeding all her babies on her back. She's got a lot to do. All right, so then we get to the plant eaters, and it kind of gets to be a lot more easier because you see that it's just a little pellet. And so you're just looking for a flat edge, and these do have a flat point to where they actually fell, even though the leaves are soft. It's a soft impact. But this is for the deer. This is a deer little pile right here. Sometimes you're going to find piles like this where they didn't actually digest it. And that could be, you know, for two reasons. It could be it's new food. They're new to that area, so their body doesn't digest it, just like humans. Sometimes you try a new meal and your body's just like, no. And either that's going to come out the top or come out the back. So same thing with these animals, you know, so you're going to find some food. So you can kind of guess that, oh, there's, you know, a new guy in this territory, or maybe they were startled. And when an animal is startled, they will, even humans, they will relieve themselves. That's going to make you run faster. That's going to get that stress hormone out of your body. So that might be a reason. So here's a scary little GIF onto why he might be scared, you know, but they're definitely going to drop anything in their bodies so they can take off running as quickly as possible if something like that happened. All right, and then it starts to get harder when you get back to the carnivores because, you know, who knows how many days it's been? Who knows how healthy their diet was, especially in the summer months. You're just like, oh, it's really dry out. They're eating whatever they can find. This guy's small, kind of probably nickel size, but this is our little feline friends. So this could be somebody's house cat, somebody's, you know, Maine Coon that just loves to explore, or it could be an actual bobcat traveling in the area. Bobcats are even very popular in our neighborhoods. They are not affected by humans. They are not worried about us, scared of us, intimidated by us. It's kind of funny. Here's another cat. We see all that hair in there. We see that dark organ tissue, just kind of summing up what you do see. It's a good little segmented log. That's another, I would say this is a true bobcat, not a house cat. And the cats in general will go out in the middle of a trail. They want the wind to kind of show that they're in the territory. That's not where they live, but it is where they're traveling to go hunting. And so you will see on nature trails, tons of animals relieving themselves there versus their own game trails because it's a better opportunity to hide where you're actually living. And this is another dried pile. So this one, it took me a while to figure out. But I'll put a disclaimer in case anyone's worried. But this is a big pile of fur. There's a little bit of feathers in it too. So an excellent hunter, okay? But a lot and in one pile. And what was really confusing is that there's actually a tree branch dragged across. So here's the branch and there's like one stem, here's a stem, and then all the seeds on top of it. So this animal is trying to cover up his very stinky mess and probably his kill. And that is actually the behavior of a large cat. And I will admit, I'm hiking in DFW all the time. And I have seen trails and I have seen footprints and I've seen piles like this. And it does make me believe that there are cougars, mountain lions that travel in our area. They might not stay here for very long, but because we have this corridor with lots of food in the woods, with lots of food in the lakes and the rivers, like, you know, somebody's definitely going to travel by. And this picture was actually from 2019, and I got footprints that day of a large cat with no nails showing. So I'm just like, yes, they're here. I don't believe in the whole rumor of like the Black Panthers because everybody in Texas has technically seen this Black Panther that's so rare. So I just can't believe it. But as a normal mountain lion, they are here in Texas. In the shadows, they definitely look very dark. They don't have a shine to their coat. You know, they're stealth hunters. You know, they're living up to their name. They really do a good job at it, and just leave them alone, but look for the evidence that they are here. They're definitely going to help take care of our hog population if we let them. All right, so this is that nasty pile. So this, I found a second one kind of like it. So this is what happens when you eat something new and you don't really consider what it can do to your body. So the picture on the left, the animal ate his prey. Dark organs, kind of some liquid in there, and then clumps of fur. And then the animal on the right ate the same meal, but I think he had a little bit more experience with this, and he started eating the honey locust seeds to soak up some of this moisture, some of this oil. And I don't know if y'all want to guess, but what animal, if you were going to eat an animal in the wild, who do you think has the most oil inside of their body? That if this was your pile of waste, like this is, it's going to hurt you. But we got some oily mammals here in Texas. We have a whole family of them. But there's a pretty oily one. See if y'all know what I'm saying or who I'm hinting at. No one said anything, but. So the predators that usually do this, I say that they're young, probably in their first or second year of life, living out on their own, just kind of testing out what they can eat. So this would be the work of a coyote, okay? But what he's actually eating, a worm, that's a good guess, but no. This is when they eat a skunk. So skunks are weasels. Minks are weasels, otters, badgers. So they have natural oil or a more oil in their skin and in their glands and meat and tissue than, most other mammals. And so when they eat that, that skunk is going to do everything he can to just make that meal as uncomfortable as possible. And that's what the skunk oil does to their scat. So when you find these really huge, weird piles like that, like I know it was uncomfortable when they digested it. I kind of equate it to, like, say you ate a whole pound of bacon and that was it. That whole thing just going through your system, all the grease and oil. One coyote tried to eat seeds to soak it up. The other coyote, just suffered through it. But that's what this is. It's gross. But once you figure it out, you're like, wow, you made a mistake today. You never find them again. It's once in like a blue moon, you see these nasty piles. So no one makes the same mistake twice. So that's why I say it's the young coyotes out on their own, trying to, test their knowledge on what to eat. Then we get beavers. So they're eating that wood. They're getting the bark, the softwood, the hardwood. And so this is what their scat looks like, just good little piles of sawdust basically that went through their warm mammal body. So you don't really see much. They do eat green grasses. They will have other things in their diet, but you'll get these huge kind of plugs of it. And that they make these kind of scent mounds too, just so y'all know, when they have an established dam territory, they kind of make these little mud piles and they're going to rub their glands, their scent glands, like a dog rubs theirs, on this pile, and they might actually relieve themselves too. And it could be pre-mating, it could be territorial, but you might find those in the woods with these little logs on them and you're just like, what? But it's communication. They don't have Twitter, they don't have Tinder, so they have to share what they have with the ladies, and this is how they do it. So this is our little beaver. Sometimes you're going to find these piles like this. So definitely some seeds. These are pokeberry seeds. They are poisonous to us humans, and deer do not like to eat them, but a lot of foxes, raccoons, opossums will. But this has a white residue on the top right. So this came from a bird. Anytime you see the white, and the splatter, it fell from the sky a good distance, got a good splatter radius here. So I would say a larger bird, maybe a crow, maybe a starling, even red-bellied woodpeckers will eat these berries. So, if you want to get your bird scat knowledge down, that's a lot harder. Ooh, do goats eat pokeweed? I'm not quite sure. It deters deer. But the guts of a goat can be completely different. So I'd have to see a goat do it to confirm it. I can't say. I don't have any goats. But if they have a heartier stomach, then they definitely could. But humans and deer, no. So our digestive tract just might not be the best for it. All right, so these little mounds, they're usually about like 1.5 inches. Good little hearty piles of food. So this is kind of unique, but these belong to toads. It's kind of hard to figure it out, but it's just way too small to be like an opossum baby just wandering around. But it could be a bullfrog or a Gulf Coast toad. Those are both pretty huge here in Texas. So they're gonna, they're omnivores also, or pretty much carnivores at that adult stage, I should say. So they're gonna eat a good amount of different things. But that's what I found. Where was this? I went to a school in the colony and I was walking around. So I do, wherever I go, you see me taking pictures of anything, just save it for a rainy day, need to identify something. So these piles are actually really common. Ooh, toad versus lizard. So lizards, their scat is more like a snake, where they're going to have that white residue when it comes out like the bird does. Toads do not have the white residue. It's It's a calcium liquid, blah, blah. I won't go into chemistry. It's kind of gross. But that's how you can tell the difference between lizards. Lizard scat is completely white most of the time, like the snakes will, but toads still have the color and the kind of the clumpy look as the regular mammal scat. So these little piles, though, are pretty popular. You probably see them in your yards, at city parks, especially after a good rain or you just did the sprinklers for a good amount of time. But this belongs to the worms. So when the soil is moist enough, all the worms come together to the surface and they, leave their castings. And this is actually great fertilizer. Definitely scoop this up, mix it up with whatever you're using for fertilizer or mulch or whatever plants you have closest. That's what this is. This has been broken down, brought back to the surface. So then there's now irrigation going on in that soil thanks to these worms. So it's a good thing when you see this in your yard. Nothing wrong is happening. You have a living ecosystem in that soil, and that's what you want. All right, so now I'm just going into poop projects around the world. So somebody did a project in Missouri where they were just studying the decomposition of these piles of scat because other animals are coming and breaking this down and decomposing it. So this is river otter. We got a lot of crayfish, fish scales in here. Happy river otter. But they just made a little note page, nothing too serious, of each day what the weather was, and they took pictures throughout. I didn't include every picture, but just to show you in 9 days what this starts to look like. So it can kind of, once you understand how it gets broken up, you can do better guesses on how old that scat is. And what about mole and gopher scat? So mole and gophers, that's a good, I don't have a picture of them in my PowerPoint, but I think I have one with my resource right here. They are, let's see. They're gonna be like squirrel scat, like they are rodents. So they're gonna have defined clumping. Okay, it's not in my guide. If someone can ever, I would say it's kind of like a rodent mixed with an armadillo scat, but I don't have examples to truly show y'all that. So it's a rare sighting. If you ever do see them, take pictures, share online, share on iNaturalist. And I bet like when scat through the ages changes, so moles 100 years ago might be eating things different in our yards and in our properties, just due to the change humans have introduced. So it'd be interesting to see. So I don't have those images, so I can't really confirm what they'd look like. So I did a kind of a copycat of seeing how this scat decomposes. So this was a coyote scat. It was already pretty old in my guesstimate, and the sun had really cooked it. But when you start to see the hole, so a week later after rain, the insects, there's a type of beetle, I think, that goes into these scats and they kind of swirl in a circle. And they make these little rounds. I guess they're getting up whatever nutrients they can. And so you'll find that in the scat. But a week later, this is what it looks like. I used a pen and I could just kind of flip it up, kind of like a sheet of dryer fuzz. But it kind of helps you understand how long the scat's been there and just how long it takes nature to break it down. Our pet dog scat is actually one of the biggest pollutants in the cities and in our waterways because it does not break. Like this is coyote scat, and I say 2 weeks total, it's completely broken down. Just the fur, which some animals might use for their nesting material. So this will be broken down, but our pets, especially dogs eating this processed food, these kibbles, that does not get broken down in nature. The insects do not know what to do with it. The detritivores, they're not used to processed cooked foods. So we got to pick up our dog scat. Another really cool project that I would love to do in Texas, or a way to benefit the black bear conservation, is in Colorado. They have the park rangers will collect bear scat from the woods, and through that scat, because they are such great omnivores, there's so much plant diversity you can use from that fertilized seed. one pile could have so many seeds in them, and they're going to go to the restroom maybe twice a day. So, if you are really on a hunt in a very diverse population of black bear, you definitely can find, a new way to regenerate plant growth for your habitat. It's already organic. It's already the seeds that are from that area, so they're already adapted to that climate versus going and buying seeds from somebody else, some other location. So they're already doing this there. I want to do it here in Texas. I don't know even how to get that going, but one day, we utilize this scat to actually, restore our habitats, because that's historically what it was. And, even in Africa, there are studies on how, as the great herbivore diets, as those numbers deplete of elephants, giraffes, rhinos, so does their scat, and so do those fertilized seeds. And so those habitats become more and more barren because of the lack of those animals, because we are all connected. Nature came to be what it was because of these animals. So we got to kind of restore the balance in these ways. And just to break everybody's dreams, butterflies are decomposers. They do this behavior as a way to flirt with the females, actually. It's called mud puddling. And they slurp up this scat. They get the goop of it, really. They're getting the salts, the sugars, the proteins, and they're presenting it to the females as an offering to mate. It's very sweet when you think about it. But that's what butterflies do. And a lot of their camouflage is benefiting that behavior of sitting on the ground for long periods of time to get this. When I first discovered it, I was so upset. I was so sad. You get the butterfly image of who they are, these nectar eaters, but no. And I will say, I have a lot of friends. I'm a tattooed person. I have a lot of friends with tattoos. And when friends have butterfly tattoos, I just love to give them all the facts. I really do. But it's just fun to learn more. All right, so last, I'm just going to cover some bit about decomposers, because if you find scat, you will find decomposers, and decomposers are another benefit to nature, probably some of the most important ones in my opinion. And some of these are edible for culinary purposes, of course. Animals take advantage of these decomposers also. And just so you know, mushrooms themselves are just the reproductive organ. They are not the complete body of the organism. I'll show you all a picture of what that is. But when you do find here's me with a big old fairy ring of mushrooms, usually that means that an animal either died or went to the restroom actually in the center of that fairy ring. And the mycelium is the actual name of the organisms that have this mushroom fruiting body, okay? And so they're eating off of that decomposed organism, whether it's the ammonia or what, and then they spread in a 360-degree radius once they've gotten all those nutrients. And then when they don't have any more nutrients to absorb, they're going to release their reproductive bodies kind of at the same, distance from that center point of nutrients. So that's when you get these fairy circles. That's where a lot of people find out they have a septic leak in their yard, or a sewer line got busted. It's not the gnomes, it's not the fairies, it's poop, it's ammonia right there. So it's just a good tip to know what causes this. There's a lot of food in that pile. I wasn't sitting on the pile either. I was a little further back. All right, sometimes you might see these are called bird nest funguses. They look like little splash cups, or they look like nests, but these are legit splash cups. The little spores in the middle want to get hit by raindrops, and these will grow on deer scat very commonly. So if you have a lot of deer on your property, you might see a lot of these bird nest funguses. They like the herbivore diet more than an omnivore carnivore diet for their nutrients. But they're a good little unique mushroom, or I should say fungus, not a mushroom, when you do see them. This is kind of a green to black sliminess you might see. A lot of people might think this is scat. My friends send me pictures of this a lot, so I just mention it. But it's called a jelly cyanobacterium. The real name is Nostoc commune. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry to anybody. This is actually edible, just so you know. It's a good survival technique to know what this is. But this is fixing nitrogen, so it is more usable to other organisms. So it is good. It'll be really black and dry in the summer, and after a good rain, it will replenish itself and grow a bit more. So you're going to see colonies of this. A lot of the nature centers here in Oak Cliff have a lot where I live. So like Oak Cliff Nature Preserve, Cedar Ridge Preserve, which is basically the same habitat, Kessler Park, Keast Park, they have this all the time. So that's why I mention it. And just so y'all know the difference between them, fungi and bacteria, they decompose it outside of their body. So it's an external process, okay? So they're breaking it down and turning it into the smaller substances, which is called detritus. Detritivores actually eat this detritus. So the fungi and bacteria come first, and then detritivores can come separately or afterwards, and they actually ingest it into their body. So just knowing the differences between what is a like decomposer is the umbrella term, but what is truly a detritivore. So we get our worms, millipedes, slugs, snails. Yeah. And of course you get your animals that eat carrion, of course, they count as detritivores because they are consuming it internally. So our vultures, the cats, the dogs, the raccoons, even the opossums, they will take advantage of some carrion. Oh, and this is just a really cool diagram that I finally found on the internet where they actually included little pieces of scat because that's the whole point. So in this nitrogen cycle, we consume nitrogen in the plants that we eat, and it gets back released through our waste. So if we basically eliminate animal scat, if you're constantly, if you eliminate fertilizer, you're just using, or I should say organic fertilizer, if you eliminate that process, the scat is very important to a habitat, then you eliminate the direct intake that decomposers can get from that scat. And so you're just eliminating that whole part of the cycle. So the nitrogen can only be processed through the atmosphere, which is very, very slow, or waiting on fertilizers in farming soil, which can be an overabundance and lead to things like the red tide effect in the Gulf and things like that. So we need the poop is basically what I'm saying. Like it needs to be here. It needs to be a part of the process. And the more we learn and know about it, the importance of it, the better we can keep these habitats safe. And if you are on iNaturalist, please take pictures of scat. I think there's even a new feature where you can specify that this is scat or animal tracks and not a picture of an organism. But what I love to do is I love to spy on these guys, the elephants. I've never been to Africa. I love elephants. And so when I see that somebody posted an image, and I think when I actually made this PowerPoint originally, like I think it was like 4 days after this date. So 4 days before that, someone found an elephant scat from at least a week before. And it just gives you a little bit of good feelings that the animals are out there, they're eating a good diet, or you hope. And there's evidence of that. And that's, just the benefit of keeping track of scat and then these resources like iNaturalist. But yeah, here's just the post about the elephant. And then all the other circles were other not other elephants, but other animals that had been located within that area. So it's good to see even across the globe where iNaturalist and other apps like this are, helping people take care of or keeping watch of these animals. Yeah, 3 cheers for scat for sure. All right, well, that was about it, you guys. I of course could go into more detail, but this is my work email. For any of you teachers or homeschool or anybody who just wants to ask me a question, geishen@texas-wildlife.org. And I would be more than happy to talk to you and answer anything. Oh, and I was gonna share the resources I have, the books and such. If you're interested in buying something, checking something out from the library, I'll just type my email in chat and then I can close my PowerPoint. I'm just I will admit, I'm a little bit obsessed with the weird parts of nature. I also do talks on like lichens, turtle, whatever topic I like, of course. But there is my email, and let me stop sharing so you can actually see my camera. So one of the best resources, you guys, is when you're out in the woods, there's this cool little keychain. It's just called Animal Scat, and it has these easy to read pictures with measurements with a description on the back. Like this is perfect for a kid of any age, an adult of any age, just wanting to learn, but without bringing out a big book with you. I think this was $7 at acornnaturalist.com. Also, it says northwoodsguides.com. That's the publisher. So northwoodsguides, both plural.com. The nature centers and state parks usually have these wildlife guides for like $7 or $8 that are laminated, so they can handle it out in the woods very easily. And they have your most common animals seen in Texas. There's a little pocket guide of mammals in Texas that has descriptions of scat. Here's just kind of a bigger, this is a field guide to urban wildlife. They're going to have descriptions. And then this book this is kind of a more in-depth one, but this is called Predation ID Manual, where you're like, I'm a little obsessed with carnivores. So when you're trying to tell the difference between, a mountain lion kill, a coyote kill, wolves. So this is a really good guide, badgers, beavers, well, not beavers, they're not truly killers, of course. But this is just a good resource with great pictures and IDs. It has scat and tracks of all these animals. But just some good resources if you did want to learn more about this. Oh yeah, vigilance.
Thank you so much. And this has been a great presentation. You really, and I mean this seriously, you really brought the topic to life in a way that I did not anticipate. It's been fascinating. And you did answer most of the questions just as they came up. Did anybody have any final questions before we go away? Seeing some praise coming in through the chat. Lots of excellence.
I know, thank y'all. I'm happy y'all want to learn about this with me. I do enjoy teaching it, y'all can tell. It's just fun. It's like the taboo part of science we don't talk or appreciate enough.
And Joe Lynn had an observation earlier in the presentation. Both the library and North Texas Master Naturalists need to be using these great programs and recruit more broadly for outreach. I agree that the challenge is a lot of times is getting the word out about the availability of these programs. The people that do find out about them and join really get a lot out of it. So, but we can always do better. And I know both the library and Master Naturalists are trying to use our social media channels to help get the word out about what we have going on. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I think that's it. Thanks again, Gwen.
Thank y'all. Yeah, thank you all for being here today. All right, well, I will sign out. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's weekend.